Dallas. We've got John Schuhmann up in New Jersey. We've got Scott Howard Cooper in the great NBA city of Sacramento, California. We've got Sekou Smith in Atlanta, and we've got Steve Aschburner talking to us from Chicago. Guys, our first topic today, we're going to get to Sacramento and Seattle, some of the biggest news this week in the NBA. But first, I want to talk to you about, I want you guys to talk a little bit about the big news that maybe slipped by some people. Yesterday, the news came out that Kevin Love re-injured his hand, broke it, and he's going to be out 8 to 10 weeks. Jeff Caplan in Dallas did a little work for that on us yesterday. Jeff, where's this leave the Timberwolves?
Well, obviously it leaves them, a double short every night, and a guy that had, obviously expanded his game to a great extent last season with a three-point shot. So, hey, it's not a good spot. I guess the positive for Minnesota is that they're used to this by now. They've been playing shorthanded all year, and at least Ricky Rubio is back now to help them at least initiate their offense, which has been a big issue. So, they're just going to have to keep fighting and scrapping here and try their hardest to pull out some wins, to try to keep themselves in contention through the All-Star break and beyond until Kevin Love gets back. And we'll see if this maybe jump-starts them into the trade market a little bit. But, obviously it's a situation where, they've been waiting to be at full strength. And now, obviously, for the next 2 months or more, they're going to be without their best player.
Steve, you've seen plenty of the Timberwolves this year. How can they make it without him?
Well, you know what? They can't. I mean, if Kevin Love is not available in a tangible way to impact the season, they almost have to get into a they almost need to just find out what they have in Derek Williams for the trade market. I don't think that both of them can thrive there. Because of the overlap in position. Ricky Rubio's not 100%. It's probably asking too much. They've done well to this point, keeping their head at or above water. But come on, 6 to 8 more weeks of no Kevin Love. And frankly, Kevin Love was having problems when he was playing. So there's no guarantee that he'll come back in better shape, less likely to complain to referees, and all the stuff that was going on.
So Sekou, you count them out?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm counting anybody out in that, 5 to 10 range in the West right now. I think it's too early to throw dirt on anybody except maybe the Lakers. No, I mean just because the way they're trending worse than anyone else in that group to me.
We'll get to them.
But no, I'm not throwing dirt on the Timberwolves just because of Love. If I were to toss a little dirt on them, it would be more than just Love. It would be the fact that, with or without them, they weren't necessarily a surefire playoff team to me. And without them, like Jeff said, without that double-double every night, without your very best player on the floor during the stretch between now and, the end of the regular season, it's just going to be hard to make a run without him. You can't take any other best player off of a borderline playoff team and ask yourself, do they make a run to the playoffs or not? It's hard to see it happen.
John Schuhmann in Jersey, tell me, how can they make it? If Love is out for 2 months, which puts him out to the end of March probably, how can they make it? I mean, is there a way? How would they have to do it?
I mean, they basically got to defend like they defended the first couple months of the season. I mean, that's how they were getting by. They were a great defensive team. They ranked in the top 3 defensively the first couple months, and were not a very good offensive team, but they were able to get by with their defense. The other way they get in is because the competition for that 8th spot isn't very good right now. I mean, if you assume that Golden State and Houston are pretty safe right now as far as making the playoffs, you're looking at 4 teams for the 8th spot, Portland, Utah, the Lakers, and the Wolves. The Lakers, we know how bad they are. Utah's hanging around. Portland is there right now, but they've got a negative point differential, and they've played a relatively easy schedule, so they're not as strong as their record is. So I think there's a shot. I mean, any of those teams has a halfway decent shot at the 8th spot in the playoffs, and if Minnesota can defend as well as they did the first couple of months of the season, then they have a shot to hang on.
So, Scott, we'll end this part of it with you. Maybe good news for the Lakers?
Is there such a thing? I didn't know that the Lakers aren't allowed to.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has buried them already, it seems, but with Kevin Love hurt, maybe that's a little bit of a window for him?
Well, I think the window was there anyway. As bad as the Lakers have been, they go on one run of 5 wins in 7 games if they can ever get there. And you know, as Sekou mentioned, it's not like any of the teams that are at the bottom of the current West playoff bracket are really scaring you. So it's not going to take a great deal to get back into this. I think as far as the Timberwolves, the name that has to be mentioned is Rick Adelman. And we all obviously hope for the best for his wife. But if we're talking about this strictly in a basketball sense, one of the great things about Rick as a coach is that he brings a lot of stability. And teams that Rick has coached in the past have surprised people in the face of injuries. The Rockets most notably in the playoffs without Yao, and certainly Minnesota. I didn't think that the Timberwolves would have done as well this far into the season as they did without Love for a lot of it and Rubio for a lot of it. So hopefully his wife gets well soon. Rick gets back on the sidelines, and that will be a benefit. I think it's obviously a tough stretch for Minnesota coming up, but I wouldn't count them out.
Let me go back to Steve Aschburner real quickly here. So just occurred to me here. Jeff mentioned it earlier about possible moves for this team. How likely is the Minnesota front office? How likely are they to make a move and to try to salvage what might be something lost if Kevin Love's not around for a while?
Well, you're asking me to think with David Kahn. I'm not
I know.
doing that, but you know what? Look, my view is if they're going to make a move, but hopefully it would be a move that they would have made regardless. It's a look at their roster and deciding. For instance, Derek was to pick on him, but he's been waiting for something to change there. You know, there seems to be a little mismatch, almost to neither guy's fault, between Adelman, who has a sooner rather than later agenda, and Derek Williams, who's very much on a later agenda. But don't make a move to patch together this group as a way to bridge a gap to Love. I don't know how successful that will be. If they get into a 7 or 8 seed, you know, God bless them, and it will be, I think, because of the core and that Love comes back in time to actually help. But no, I don't see any move that's going to be them.
All right. That was big news, obviously, yesterday, the whole thing with Minnesota and with Kevin Love, but it really paled next to our next subject here. And Sacramento was the center of the universe yesterday, Scott Howard Cooper there in Sacramento, and it may not be the center of an NBA universe very much longer. Tell me what you know. Tell me what you think is going to happen here in the next 3-4 months. March 1, I guess, is a big day.
March 1 is the deadline to file for relocation. It certainly is possible that could be extended. It has in the past, and a lot of the people within the league is obviously interested in having a team in Seattle. So if this thing is on the verge of happening and we get to the last few days of February, an extension is possible. But right now, March 1 is the working date that this deal needs to be done by. They're obviously deep into negotiations. We don't know if it's actually going to happen. The important thing to keep in mind, and this is probably the biggest hope for the people in Sacramento right now, is that the Maloofs have put the brakes on very late in the process before. Remember, they were well down the road with Anaheim a couple years ago in terms of planning a move there. They wouldn't have had to sell. That would have been the Maloofs Kings going down. And that ended up not happening. And then, of course, they were even farther down the road with the city of Sacramento to stay and had an arena deal in place. The city council approved it. Mayor Kevin Johnson showed up at a game, and 2 of the Maloof brothers went out to center court with him and raised their hands in triumph, and it was a great deal of celebration. And then the Maloof family pulled out of that one as well. So the fact that this is far along does not indicate it's a done deal, but obviously things are not looking good for Sacramento keeping the Kings.
Let me ask you, Scott, put you on the spot here maybe a little bit. chances that the Maloofs will back out of what might be very close to being a deal? I mean, do you think that you think this thing at Seattle is going to happen?
I do, and that's a sense more than based on any one fact in particular. I think that they know they really don't have any options, and for the longest time, the Maloof family said selling was not anything that they would consider. Now they've obviously changed their mind on that, and at the very least are strongly considering it and possibly on the verge of doing it. So this is really their only way out. Their options are to sell for what has been reported at $500 million, which is a ridiculously large profit, or to stay in Sacramento and keep banging their heads against the wall. So I would say that if you ask me to put a number on it, I would say it's 99-1 that they're gone, but there is that 1%.
Wow, that's tough, and it must be tough for you, Scott. You got to be a little bit torn. I mean, I know obviously you'd love to have a team in Sacramento, but you know Seattle. That's you got to be happy for them.
Oh, I think everybody agrees. Seattle is not just a great place for basketball. Seattle's a great town. It's a great place, period. It's a terrific sports town. They've got a rich tradition on a lot of different fronts. They've obviously got the major league sports. But University of Washington, UW, is very, very prominent there. I don't think there's anybody that's saying that why would you want to be in Seattle? That's not the discussion at all. It's just the market. Sacramento is a very unique market, and one of the things that I wrote today is that this is not just any other move because of what this team means to the city emotionally and in the tangible sense.
Steve, you did a lot of work yesterday talking to some people in and around Seattle. What do you gauge as the mood up there?
Well, you know, the people I spoke with for that story, you know, there was a sense that having gone through what they did with the Oklahoma City transfer, that be a heck of a way to get a team to swipe someone else's, basically. You know, there's some segment of the population up there, the sports population, that wouldn't feel great about that. You know, more power to them on that. I assume the sincerity of that is about like mine when I say, "Oh no, you take the last piece of cake." As soon as you don't, it's gone. I'm happy. You know, look, it was a great NBA town. They felt wronged. There probably is some bitterness. What I heard is that right now the NBA might as well be non-existent for many people up there. They don't care. They don't want to read about it in the papers in terms of just ongoing things with the league. Certainly about the funder, you know, that hurts. But if they got the green light and they were back in, I think that town would spring right back. It was resilient, and frankly, I saw online yesterday that the last 5 years, the attendance at the Key Arena was better than the past 5 years at Sleep Train. So, you know, in terms of support, and you know, there's numbers there, and I don't blame Sacramento fans whatsoever. They had one of the most intimidating atmospheres. I was there for duct light sticks and all sorts of stuff, cowbells, and so I mean it's not a fans thing, but Seattle is ready, and they kept the nickname, they kept the colors, they kept Squatch, and all of that is ready, I think, with a moment's notice to just come roaring back.
Sekou, if you're Seattle, you take that last piece of cake?
Yeah, and listen, I'm biased. My best friend is from Seattle, and he's like the world's most outlandish Sonics fan. He's one of these nutty Sonics fans. He actually met this Chris Hansen guy at some nightclub where he was DJing, and he took a picture with him and put it on Facebook months ago. So he's been building up to the Sonics coming back, and I think it would be different if they were losing. You know, Sacramento loses the team and they go somewhere else and they don't rename them the Sonics. You know, they go to Seattle, they don't rename them the Sonics, and they try and start a whole new tradition. But by bringing a team there, and if they get everything Sonics back in place, there are a lot of people in Seattle who are not going to care about this little stretch where they didn't have a team. They're going to go right back in to being passionate about that team. It'll help if DeMarcus Cousins is on the roster and they got some talent to work with next year. But they having spent a lot of time there, covering the Sonics when they were around, when they played the teams I covered, as well as spending time there in college, just hanging out and getting to know the city and the sports culture there. As Scott mentioned, I mean, they love their teams to death in the Pacific Northwest. All you have to do is drive down the 5 and see what they do in Portland with the Trailblazers and the Timbers and the Oregon Ducks. I mean, when they get their claws in the team in the Pacific Northwest, it's their team, and I would expect that their fan base would be out in droves rooting this team on.
I'll add to what Sekou just said. Is I spoke to Kendall Gill yesterday, and he played 2 years in Seattle, and he loves the city. And it's cold right now, I guess, because this thing hasn't happened. But he says the difference in free agent appeal for NBA players willing to go play in Seattle as opposed to maybe go to Sacramento is considerable. So all of a sudden now, on a competitive win and loss basis, that teams' fortunes could change quickly.
I want to let me look big picture here for a little bit, league-wide picture here. Jeff Caplan in Dallas there. What's that mean? What's a possible move back to Seattle mean for the league as a whole?
Well, I think it brings a whole corner of the country back into the game. I mean, it's really a crime, I think, that Seattle lost its team. And you go back to the whole thing of the Seattle fans going to feel guilty the way they're getting this team. I don't think they should. I mean, I think this should really be put at the feet of the Maloof brothers losing this team, and there's not going to be NBA expansion. So if you want a team, you're going to get somebody else's team. And hey, look, it's not like also when Clay Bennett, that sort of felt like a heist. I mean, he went in there and there were promises of staying. Now, of course, people of Seattle had a chance to vote for an arena and never got done. But that thing almost felt like the Baltimore Colts leaving under under the veil of darkness and getting out of town. I think it's great for the league, to be honest. I'm sorry for Sacramento, but like Steve said, I think that some of the happiest people will be the players on the current team going to a city like Seattle and putting down roots there. And it just brings back an entire part of the country, I think, back into the fold, which is, I think, great for the league. The NFL would love to have LA, back in. They haven't been able to get there. You can't compare LA to Seattle, obviously, but that's a big part of the country right there that was down to just down to Portland.
JD, I will mention one other thing too. When Steve mentions what it looks like to free agents, don't forget that Seattle has upwards of a half dozen NBA players that are from Seattle. From Jamal Crawford and Nate Robinson and Spencer Hawes. I mean, and they have more coming that are in the college ranks now that will be matriculating to the NBA. So when you talk about a team that all of these guys grew up watching and being fans of, when free agency rolls around, it won't be hard to convince some of those guys that, hey, if there's an opportunity there and they're on the market, come on home and play for the Sonics. There are guys who I would think, jump at that opportunity, at least in certain specific cases.
This is still.
Go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, this is still all going to be about the same two things, though, and geography isn't one of them. It's about who has the money to spend, and is the team going to be a winner? That's what it's still going to come down to for the players. If they're going to get paid more money to be with a team, whether it's in Seattle or Dallas or Chicago or Los Angeles, that's going to have a huge factor. If they're going to have a chance to play there in terms of having a bigger role than maybe on another team, or if you're a veteran and you're saying, I want a chance to have a nice playoff run and maybe contend for a championship, those are going to be the big factors. And I think that's what's going to happen here, is because the Maloofs just did not have the spending power in recent years to put this team in a position to win. And if they go to Seattle, it's obviously going to be with extremely deep pockets. So if they get better players and start winning, and they have the money to spend on free agents and are willing to be more aggressive in terms of how they manage the salary cap and the luxury tax, and whether they're willing to go over and things like that, that's going to be the real factor, not whether it's Sacramento or Seattle.
But all things being equal, Scott, if you've got two teams that are pretty close and a free agent trying to choose between them, and it's between Seattle and Memphis, Seattle's going to win that.
I'm not discounting the city. I'm not saying it's a non-factor.
Right.
What I'm saying is You know what? Most people wouldn't say that San Antonio is glamorous. San Antonio, Oklahoma City, those places aren't going to top LA or Miami or New York as far as the glam. But I don't know. Have those teams had trouble getting people or keeping people? It's about the situation, the organization, the chance of winning, and the money that they have to spend. It's not. You're right. If you're looking at a pick 'em, if you're a player and you're choosing between certain cities, yeah. But I'm saying if you have a good situation, you will get players and you will keep players.
Okay.
I don't know if I agree with that because I think for certain guys, there's going to be, depending on what stage you are in your career, if you have a choice between San Antonio and LA, depending on who you are, you pick a city based on the location. Look at Steve Nash's situation. He could have gone to New York or LA, and his kids were in Phoenix. LA was the closer. I think the city's always going to play a factor for certain players.
I agree. And you look at San Antonio and Oklahoma City as well. I mean, name me a top free agent that they've signed. Those teams have been built from within through the drafts and signing other kind of mid-level type of guys. And you look at it, it really comes down to the player. Tim Duncan set the foundation there by staying. And then you bring in the type of people that Manu and Tony Parker are, and they stay. And you look at the kind of guy that Kevin Durant is, he stays in Russell Westbrook. So I think it's the players and also realizing a good situation with the organization.
No, that's wrong. I mean, it's not just, if you want to say look at the free agents that they added, I'd say look at the free agents that they lost. These guys could have gone anywhere, and they have players from every walk of life. Tony Parker is from Paris or from France and chose to stay in San Antonio. Russell Westbrook is a city kid from L.A. Kevin Durant is Maryland, D.C. Manu Ginobili from South America. These are people that are worldly people, and if they wanted to be in L.A., Miami, New York, something like that, it's not just about look at the free agents that they've recruited, because they haven't, quite honestly, need to recruit the blockbuster free agents. They've kept the free agents that they've had because they were willing to spend, because they were winning situations. And it's just not true to be able to say who have they added, because in those situations it's who have they kept. And Kevin Durant,
and I agree with
Kevin Durant could have left, and the Steve Nash situation is very, very unique because that was because his kids were living in Phoenix. If his kids were living in Jersey or something like that, he would have gone to New York. That wasn't about LA as an attractive market because it was Los Angeles. That was strictly the distance from Phoenix.
Right. Sure, I agree with that.
Crazy. Sure, it wasn't. And this idea that the Thunder kept Kevin Durant and Westbrook, they never got to the point where they were actual free agents. I mean, you draft a guy
but they could have.
Winning culture, and you're rolling. Of course, you offer him the most money he's going to get basically anywhere else. Why would he leave?
Exactly. Money
about
and winning.
The kind of free agents, like guys like Shane Battier and these periphery players who make championship rosters, Ray Allen, they make choices based on the situation, the city. I mean, there's all these other factors that go into it than just who's going to give me the most money for a guy of a certain stature. I think any young guy who hasn't gotten his money yet is going to follow the money trail. But a veteran, the kind of guys that push you over the top into a championship realm, those are the guys where the location of the city and whether or not it's the right kind of city can make a huge difference.
Let me get back real quick here, guys, and before we wrap this up. Scott, I'm asking you about Sacramento. Obviously, Seattle may or may not draw some people because it's Seattle. As you say, sometimes it's or often it's the situation in Seattle rather than the city itself. Sacramento, though, do you think it ever hurt? Or was it you're saying mainly it was the Maloofs and the Kings rather than the city itself that hurt people coming to Sacramento?
Certainly, at the end of their era, if this is the end, then yes. Because if you look, when this thing really took off, it's because they added guys like Vlade Divac and traded obviously for Chris Webber, traded for Mike Bibby. Drafted Peja Stojakovic, so it wasn't all about free agency. But again, Chris Webber could have left. and chose to stay. And it was because of the money, obviously, but it was also because of the winning situation. If he had been a free agent at the time that the Kings were, the number 8 team in the West and struggling to make the playoffs, I think his read would have been very different than the fact that it was at the time that the Kings had a chance to really be something special. And it's the same reason a lot of players would choose to stay as well. I just think there's too many examples of times where you would say this city is not real exciting, that in the so-called small market, that teams win and they spend and they keep their players. There's just too many. You can point out too many times in history of San Antonio, Oklahoma City, Salt Lake City, Sacramento. I don't disagree with the premise that players want to be in certain places more than the others. I'm not naive in saying that. I'm saying that the other factors are larger than that. And if you're going to give a guy $2 million more in a small market than to be in Los Angeles or New York or Miami, there's a good chance the players are going to take that money.
Well, and the fact is, too, just real quickly, is that your top free agents really don't leave anyway. They've always been able to make more money where they are with the team they're with, and that's even more true now. I mean, outside of LeBron, who changed, obviously, you don't see a lot of the top stars leave. I mean, we saw Darren Williams take the money and stay in Brooklyn when he could have come home to Dallas. There's lots of examples like that. So your top free agents who are going to make the biggest money don't necessarily leave where they are anyway.
Yeah, unless they're Chris Bosh and they go to Miami, or
right.
Carmelo and he ends up. Players want to be in certain.
Well, Carmelo
cities.
Was traded.
But I'm saying, let's not kid ourselves. He's a free agent. He's not picking. He's not going to pick some town he doesn't want to be in if he has an option to go to New York or whatever. We got to be. I mean, let's just be realistic here. It's a money thing at a certain stage of a career, and I think when you get beyond that for certain guys, it becomes more complicated.
Well, a lot of it is second contracts and third contracts.
Yeah.
The second contracts, guy's going to have a chance for the money. But I look at a guy like Kevin Love. If he takes his opt-out after 3 years on this extension, is he more likely to want to go to Sacramento or go to Seattle? And lives in the Portland area. Seattle will be awfully close if Portland's not an option. So I think it's a little bit of both, obviously, and that's what Scott was saying. You can't totally negate one, but I just know what the player told me yesterday, and Seattle, I think, has that buzz with guys.
Guys, let me end it up here with Scott here and asking him a little bit more about Sacramento. If the Kings leave, if they go to Seattle, David Stern has told Kevin Johnson, as you've pointed out many times, that the chances of them getting another NBA team are pretty slim. What's your feeling about do you see any uprising there? Do you see anybody getting anybody all worked up and trying to keep one? I know there's a petition out there. Is there any chances that this is just going to die once it leaves, if it leaves?
The chances of getting a replacement team, or the chances of any kind of public support to keep the team?
Both. It would need both, I would guess. Will it have enough public support to either get an expansion team or another team, or is it just everybody going to say, well, we tried and we're not going to get one?
Never say never, but it's a real long shot that the NBA would come back. For one thing, they still have to get the arena situation settled, and that's a new battle for Mayor Kevin Johnson. Is to get this town still needs an entertainment complex, and Kevin Johnson has said as much and said that they're going to be pushing forward with plans, no matter whether the Kings are here or not. But let's see what happens. If they can get an arena done, do they want to get an 18,000 seat arena, or do they have to say, we're looking more at concerts and ice shows and circus and that kind of thing, and let's look more at 12 or 14,000. And is that going to be enough to get an NBA team to come here? And the bottom line is, we don't know if they can even get an arena deal done here without the Kings. Even if the Kings come out today and say there's a sale, and they apply by March 1st to move, and on day one of training camp next season they're in Seattle, that still doesn't answer the Sacramento arena question, and nothing is happening without a new arena in Sacramento. Let's suppose now, for the sake of discussion, they do get one. If there is a new building in Sacramento, there will always be a lot of conversation. There's going to be some, local buzz about getting a replacement team. There's going to be a lot of pointing to the situation in Charlotte, where the Hornets moved to New Orleans after a great deal of support in Charlotte, historic levels of support in terms of attendance, and then they soured on the owners and on the owner, and the team ended up leaving. Charlotte ended up getting another team. I think that's going to be something people here are really going to latch on to. But it's going to be a real long shot. David Stern has told Kevin Johnson, don't wait by the phone. Chances are going to be very slim. It's a small market. We obviously have to see what the economy is going to be like in 3 or 5 years when this starts to come back around. But I would say it would be a surprise if it ever moves from the discussion stage to the actual stage.
Okay.
Probably a better chance to get a Sunbelt NHL team up there.
That's all we got, guys. We didn't get a chance to talk about Kevin Garnett and his dust up this week or many other things. I know he's a favorite of yours, Ash. But we'll talk again soon. So thanks anyway, guys, and we'll call that a wrap.